Let's bring in Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. And Joel, this move is straining our relationship with Saudi Arabia. Critics calling out the country for supporting Russia and snubbing Americans. So what does this cut in oil production say?
Marcel, you hit the nail on the head. What this snub and frankly, this cut does is it harms Americans at the pump directly, and it puts money in the pocket of Vladimir Putin. And none of that is good for the United States. We're watching Saudi Arabia make a strategic decision to align with Putin in a manner that directly flies in the face of the request from the president back in July. Now, the president made the right call when he visited Saudi Arabia to test Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, and to put the onus on him to decide whose side he was on. And unfortunately, now we see the answer, and it's not good for the United States, and it's not good for Saudi Arabia as well.
Yeah, lose-lose. And we did see that President Biden enforced sanctions on Russia throughout the war, but that really didn't have any impact. One senator has even demanded that the U.S. immediately halt all cooperation with Saudi Arabia, including weapons sales. Do you see that actually taking place, and will these sanctions actually do anything?
But this has been a slow boil for a number of years on Capitol Hill. Saudi Arabia, for many reasons, has upset members of Congress, in particular related to 9/11 terrorist attacks and the families of the victims who went to Capitol Hill and tried to seek some kind of compensation from Saudi. And ever since then, it's been tense. But it really peaked in 2018 with the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who was dismembered in Turkey at the demand of the current leader of Saudi Arabia. And things have gone downhill from there. And right now, President Biden is trying to find a way to ensure that American interests are satisfied with Saudi Arabia. But I think this decision demonstrates that they're not. And Capitol Hill is going to look at the relationship overall, as you said, and look at weapons sales, look at strategic questions, and put pressure now on the Biden administration and on Saudi Arabia to try to, as you say, right-size the relationship and make sure Saudi Arabia understands that this decision is counterproductive.
Yeah. Let's break down the impact this will have on individuals. Moscow has said it's prepared to cut its oil output if the G7 nations carry through with a U.S.-led price cap. But what does this actually mean for the average American watching?
Well, in the near term, it means that markets are going to expect less oil on the market, meaning more prices and more expensive oil at the pump, gas at the pump. And so that is the political calculation as well. And I have to say, it's important to note that there are concerns as well that this decision is intended to make it more difficult heading into the elections for the Democrats, who will see President Biden criticized for the rise in gas prices. And that playing politics in the United States is a very risky business for foreign governments. And if that is the case, and certainly Democrats are suspicious of that, that will likely open up more questions. But in the near term, Americans are going to pay more at the pump, and that's going to be painful for all of us. Yeah.
And you kind of touched on it right there. The midterms right around the corner. How will this impact our nation's lawmakers when it comes to the transparency of this U.S.-Saudi relationship?
We're going to have a lot of legislation offered, a lot of hearings called for from Capitol Hill, and demands to really understand what we're getting out of this bilateral relationship right now. This relationship goes back to 1945, after World War II, or just towards the end of it, an agreement to have the United States secure the Persian Gulf and provide security in an agreement with Saudi Arabia in return for the free flow of oil and markets benefiting from that. And it looks right now like that deal is kind of coming to an end. Yeah. And the question will be, what's next? And I think that's where the Biden administration is leaning, is to say, we're going to do a reassessment, and it needs to be a strategic reassessment, a comprehensive look at the entire relationship. And so you're going to see more information coming out of the administration and more calls for information as well coming from Capitol Hill.
Yeah. And like you just mentioned, this relationship has been going on for decades. But why do you think this is now the move that will be the last straw to shake it up?
In many ways, what this is it's a betrayal of the core objective of the United States right now, which is to protect a democracy, a democratic ally in Ukraine from an onslaught by an autocratic regime in Russia that is seeking to colonize it. And the administration is looking at who's picking sides and what sides they want to be on. And for Saudi Arabia to make this decision with OPEC plus, and OPEC plus means OPEC plus Russia. So for Saudi Arabia to jointly partner with Russia to cut oil supplies on the market, to increase prices for Americans, and provide more revenue for Vladimir Putin in the face of a global effort to reject Putin's aggression, that is a bridge too far for many people in general, and certainly for national security leaders and people on Capitol Hill.
A relationship that we must keep a close eye on. Joel Rubin, thank you so much for breaking this down here on our show.
Thanks so much.